Excuse me, mate. Got 2 minutes? Haha. Hello and welcome to the Better You in 2 podcast. I am your host, Isaac Frimpong, and I'm an artist that loves to read books. I have a YouTube channel where I do 2-minute animated book summaries, hence the name Better You in 2. This podcast will be used to talk and review books in just a little more detail. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Okay, so just in case if you're listening to this podcast and you have not yet seen my 2-minute animated summary, which I would encourage you to do so, but just before we get into the meat of the podcast, a quick overview of some of the things that I mentioned about James Clear's story, about how he was playing baseball with his friends and one of his friends swung for the ball and he had the bat in his hand and the bat fell into his face. He was put into an induced coma, had a seizure, had broken bones on his face. But then he managed to turn his life around after coming out of the coma. And this is kind of like the birth of how the Atomic Habits was formed. He mentions that, despite this, he was able to do well in his academic studies, break several college records athletically. And, again, just by implementing these atomic habits, he was able to turn his life around. Okay, so as we get into the podcast, the aim of the podcast has always been, I pick 3 of my favorite lessons that I've learned from the book and talk about it in a bit more detail. So in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he mentions 4 laws of behavioral change, obviously referring to trying to develop new habits. And these are the things that you need to do in order to develop these new habits. One of my favorite ones, which I'm going to speak about now, is, I believe it's law number 1, and that is make it obvious. So I mentioned in, I think one of my rules on my Instagram page about, if say you wanted to develop a new habit of doing more exercise, for example, some people might think, okay, after work, I'm going to go on a long run. Let's say I'm going to go on a 5k run. Now, is this necessarily the most obvious time to do it? I would say no, because if you think about it, you've gotten up, you've done what you need to do, you've had a long day at work. For many of us, our work schedules are quite stressful. And for you to now get home and then now having to go on a run may not be the most obvious time, because realistically, you're tired mentally, you're tired physically. That might not be the obvious time to do it. So I mentioned the suggestion that maybe, okay, if your commute is not too far, if this is applicable for you, how about cycling to and from work? So instead of getting on a bus or getting on a train or even driving, you could cycle on your commute to work. For some people, to cycle to work might be even quicker than getting on public transport. It might only be a 30-minute or even 20-minute cycle to work, and then also you cycle on the way home. Then that way you've gotten in easily 40 minutes to an hour of more exercise than you would have normally got. You could do that Monday to Friday, and that is a way that you can develop a new habit, and that's probably an obvious way to get more exercise in. I'll speak for myself, and part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast and you're hearing this podcast and you've seen the book reviews on YouTube and on Instagram, one of the things that I developed, or one of the ways I found a way to develop a new positive habit, was because of the job that I do. I'm a gas engineer and I have to do a lot of driving in between jobs. I could do maybe 10 to 15 jobs a day. One of the things that I was doing is on my commute, which is obviously I have to drive to work because I need to have the van with all the tools and stuff in the back. But instead of listening to music or listening to the sports radio, I would now start listening to audiobooks. And that's when this new habit was developed for me, and that's where I've been gaining a lot of knowledge and a lot of encouragement from these self-help books that I've been listening to, and hence why you've got this content, you're listening to this content now. So again, it was an obvious way I could get this new habit in. I mean, I've been listening to audiobooks now for the last 3 years, and I could easily say probably for the last 10 years, I've always wanted to develop the new habit of reading more books. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I've understood the benefit of it, but I just not implemented the obvious thing, and that was use my commutes to listen to audiobooks. And for me personally, it's been a big game changer. Yeah, so just think about a more obvious time or location that you can actually achieve those goals. Maybe your environment's not right. So for example, like for myself, you want to read a book, but the TV's on, or the kids are, jumping on your head, and, it's not the right time to do it. But that commute to work, I have to do it. That's time I'm never going to get back. I have to do that commute to work and in between jobs. Why not utilize that time and be more productive with that time? I'm listening to something anyway. It's not like when I'm in the van, the radio is off and I'm just in complete silence. I'm listening to something. So to me, it seemed obvious to just, instead of listening to something that doesn't necessarily edify you, why not listen to a self-help book or something that's actually going to help you? Alright, so moving on. Another one of James Clear's 4 laws of behavioral change, which was one of my favorites, was make it attractive. I believe this is law number 3. Now again, on my Instagram page, on one of my reels, I mentioned the need that as you're trying to change your life and build and implement new habits, it's kind of like human nature. Over time, when you don't see the results as quickly as you want to, you can very easily get discouraged. And this is kind of like a solution for you to not give up. The reason why I say that is because, again, human nature, you know, when we don't see things the way we anticipate, you can get discouraged and then just give up altogether. So you need to think of ways to implement some sort of reward. So a good example of that, you want to, you know, improve your health and fitness, and you decide, okay, I'm going to go on some sort of diet. Now again, is going cold turkey the best method in order for you to achieve your goals? Some may say yes, but I would disagree. And according to this book, I believe that James Clear is probably on the same wavelength, in the sense that every now and then you can incorporate allowing yourself to have some of your favorite cheat meals. Now I'm not saying a whole cheat day, but I'm just saying, you know, maybe once a week you can reward yourself. If say your schedule is from Monday to Saturday, if you've done what you're supposed to do, eaten well, trained well, on a Sunday, one cheat meal, it's not going to kill your results altogether. That makes the new habits that you're trying to implement more attractive, that you know at the end of the week, okay, if I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm allowed to have XYZ. Again, I'm not saying a whole cheat day where, you know, you just binge out on all the, you know, the burgers and the chips and everything else, but you know, one meal, you're still eating healthy for the rest of the day, but you know, in the evening you just have a cheat meal, and then Monday you go again. For me personally, one thing that I've tried to implement is rewarding myself with sleep. I mean, for some people that might not be a big thing, but for me, for someone who doesn't really get much sleep, and I know it's an area that I really need to improve on, but what I've tried to do and tried to implement in terms of my own habits is that on a Monday to Friday, I'll put in the work, I'll get up early, rise early, and do what I'm supposed to do. On a Saturday and Sunday, those are my days where I'm allowing myself to get up later than I usually do during the week and rewarding myself with sleep, but only on the condition that on Monday to Friday, I've done what I'm supposed to do. So again, in my view, that makes the new habits more attractive, because I know at the end of the week, there's going to be some sort of reward. So in the words of James Clear, always remember, when you're developing new habits, make those new habits attractive. Okay, so the third and final lesson that I learned from this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, is very important for you to fall in love with the process. Recognize that the process is always going to take longer than you think. And if that's the case, if you know, or if you have in the back of your mind that the process is always going to take longer than what you anticipate, what you're going to do in the meantime. In addition to that, if you cannot appreciate those small things in life, what makes you think you're going to appreciate those big things? So what I mean by that, if every day, you know, you're going about your business, you're developing these new habits and you're seeing those small wins. Let's go back to exercise. One of the goals I had last year actually was to be able to run 5k in under 20 minutes. Now, I didn't follow through with it, but I think that's maybe something that I want to try and do this year. And I got as close to, I think, 21 minutes. But it's those small wins. Every time you go on that 5k run, if you did 5k and it took you, say, let's say for argument's sake, 25 minutes. The next time you did 5k and you did the run in 24 minutes and 50 seconds. It's only 10 seconds less, but it's a small win. There's some sort of improvement. Fall in love with the process. Reward yourself for that. Encourage yourself in that, and praise yourself for doing that. Enjoy those small wins, so that when you actually get to the actual destination or the goal that you want to get to, because you've learned how to appreciate those small wins, you can therefore appreciate the big win, which was the big ultimate goal. I mentioned in one of my reels on my Instagram page that it's like you going on a long journey to your favorite destination. You could go to the Bahamas, the Caribbean. You've got everything that you wish for is there. You know, you got your ensuite, your all-inclusive, your favorite meals, your favorite music. Everything that you dream of is at that location. But before you get there, you've got to go through the flight, the long flight. The flight might take 8 to 10 hours. You've got to go through check-in and book the tickets. And there's a journey, there's a process that you're going to have to go through before you get to that dream destination. You know, we've had experience with this whole COVID situation, so now you may have to take a COVID test, and there's so many things. These things cost a lot of money for you to be able to get to a destination, but for you to really appreciate and enjoy that end destination, learn how to enjoy and fall in love with that process. So as you're going through the process, you're going through that long journey, appreciate the things that you're going to see. When you're on the plane and you're up in the sky and you see the clouds, take it in, enjoy it. The same thing with our habits. As you're trying to get to that end destination, you trying to lose weight or create a new life for yourself, as you're learning throughout those experiences, you may take a couple of hits, you may be discouraged along the way, but learn from those experiences so that when you get to that final destination, you can look back and seeing everything that you've gone through and everything that it's taken for you to get there, and you can truly appreciate what you've achieved by implementing these atomic habits than the result that it has produced. You have to remember the difference between the end goal and the process. The process is always going to take longer than you anticipate, so we might as well enjoy the journey. Okay, so there you have it, the Better You in 2 podcast by myself, your host, Isaac Frimpong, an artist that loves to read books. Firstly, I have to say that this is one of my favorite books that I've read so far. I started this listening to audiobooks, as I've mentioned, on my commute to and fro work and in between the jobs in 2018, 3 years now, and still this is one of my favorite books that I've read. I would highly recommend this book to anyone who wants to see a better version of themselves. It's an easy read and I think it's applicable to lots of people. You look at your lifestyle, you look at your current life and you're not totally happy with it, and I think there's an element of that for all of us. I think for most of us who are living lives that we're not really pleased with, this is a practical book that will help you get the most out of your day. He's not saying that you can just get rid of bad habits altogether and that's it. No, he teaches that the only way to get rid of those bad habits is replacing them with good ones, and with that notion and with that mentality, that will help you go far in life. So this is a book that I would highly recommend. As I said, I'm your host, Isaac Frimpong. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for listening. Take care and God bless.